The screaming started at 0347 hours, Terran Standard Time. Dr. Sarah Chen pressed her hands against the gaping wound in the alien child's chest, her fingers slick with purple blood that glowed faintly in the dim emergency lighting. Around her, the medical station buzzed with desperate activity as human medics worked alongside their alien counterparts to save lives torn apart by the civil war raging across Kepler 442b. "Another transport incoming," shouted Nurse Martinez, his voice barely audible over the thunder of approaching ships. 30 casualties, mixed species. Sarah didn't look up from her patient. The Zephyrian child, no more than 8 years old by human standards, had taken shrapnel to the lung. Her small hands trembled as she fought to breathe, her large golden eyes fixed on Sarah's face with absolute trust. "It's okay, little one," Sarah whispered, injecting a cocktail of universal painkillers. "We're going to fix you up." The medical station sat in neutral territory, marked clearly with the Red Cross of Earth and surrounded by the energy shields that proclaimed it a sanctuary. No weapons, no soldiers, just doctors, nurses, and aid workers from 12 different species, united in their mission to heal rather than harm. That's when the first plasma blast struck. The explosion threw Sarah across the room, her ears ringing as debris rained down around her. Emergency lights flickered red, casting hellish shadows on the walls. Through the smoke, she could see figures moving, soldiers in the distinctive black armor of the hegemony's elite forces. "This is a medical facility." Dr. Reeves, the station commander, stepped forward with his hands raised. The elderly man's voice shook but remained steady. "We're protected under the Galactic Accords." The hegemony commander removed his helmet, revealing the scaled face and cold yellow eyes of a draconian. His lipless mouth curved into something that might have been a smile. Not anymore human. The second blast vaporized Dr. Reeves where he stood. Sarah crawled toward the alien child, who lay motionless beneath a fallen beam. Around her, she could hear the distinctive whine of energy weapons and the screams of her colleagues. The hegemony soldiers moved through the station systematically, executing patients in their beds, gunning down medics as they tried to flee. "Please," she gasped, reaching the child, still breathing, still alive. "She's just a baby." The draconian commander appeared above her, his weapon trained on her head. "Your species spreads like a disease," he hissed. "Your compassion makes you weak. Today, we cure the galaxy of both." Sarah closed her eyes, shielding the child with her body. She thought of her daughter back on Earth, of her husband who'd begged her not to take this assignment. She thought of all the lives she'd saved, all the good she'd tried to do. The weapon fired, but death didn't come. Instead, Sarah heard a mechanical voice, cold and precise. "Recording complete. Transmission successful. The Terran Council has been notified." She opened her eyes to find the commander staring at a small device in his clawed hand, a medical recorder that had been transmitting everything to Earth in real time. His scaled face had gone pale. "You just made a mistake," Sarah whispered, blood trickling from her lips. "A very big mistake." The commander's weapon swung back toward her, but this time when he pulled the trigger, his hand was shaking. 7 minutes later, every major news network in human space was broadcasting the footage, the image of medics being executed while protecting alien children. The sound of a hegemony commander declaring war on compassion itself. On Earth, in the halls of the Terran Council, something dark and terrible began to stir. The emergency session of the Terran Council had never seen anything like it. Admiral Elena Vasquez stood before the assembly, her dress uniform pristine, despite having traveled 36 hours straight from the outer rim. Behind her, the massive holographic display showed the smoking ruins of Medical Station Alpha 7. Bodies scattered like broken dolls, the Red Cross banner torn and bloodied, hanging from twisted metal. 17 humans dead, she said, her voice carrying easily through the chamber's perfect acoustics. 43 alien civilians murdered while under our protection, including children. The silence was absolute. 3,000 representatives from across human space sat motionless, their faces reflecting the horror of what they'd witnessed. In the gallery above, journalists from every major network waited with cameras trained on the proceedings. "The hegemony claims it was a military target," continued Admiral Vasquez. They say we were harboring insurgents. She paused, her jaw tightening. I've reviewed the complete mission logs. We were treating burn victims and performing surgery on a 6-year-old girl when they opened fire. Council Speaker Morrison, a soft-spoken diplomat who'd spent 40 years advocating for peace, rose slowly from his chair. His hands shook as he gripped the podium. The hegemony has requested a formal meeting, he said quietly. They wish to discuss reparations. A murmur ran through the chamber. Reparations. As if money could bring back Dr. Chen, who died shielding an alien child. As if credits could resurrect Nurse Martinez, who'd taken a plasma bolt to the chest while carrying wounded to safety. Admiral Vasquez's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in her eyes. What does command recommend? Restraint, Morrison replied. Negotiation. We cannot let emotion drive us to… Emotion? The voice came from the back of the chamber, cutting through Morrison's words like a blade. Representative Jackson stood slowly, his weathered face a mask of controlled fury. My daughter was on that station. My Sarah was trying to save lives when they executed her like a dog. The chamber erupted. Shouts of anger mixed with calls for order. In the gallery, cameras captured every moment as humanity's elected leaders grappled with a choice that would define their future. Morrison slammed his gavel repeatedly, but the chaos continued until Admiral Vasquez raised her hand. The gesture was small, almost casual, but it carried the weight of command earned through decades of service. The chamber fell silent. There will be a vote, she announced. Full military authorization under Article 7 of the Colonial Defense Act, Article 7. The words sent a chill through the chamber. It hadn't been invoked since the Martian Rebellion 2 centuries ago. Full military authorization meant no restrictions, no oversight, no limits on the response. The motion requires a 2/3 majority, Morrison said weakly. Surely we can find another way. All in favor? Hands rose across the chamber like a tide. Not slowly, not reluctantly, but with the swift certainty of a people who had seen enough. Representatives who'd spent their careers advocating for peace and diplomacy raised their hands without hesitation. The count was swift and brutal. 2,047 in favor, 98 against, 55 abstentions. Morrison stared at the display in shock. In all his years of service, he'd never seen such unity. Never witnessed humanity speak with such a single, terrible voice. Admiral Vasquez stepped to the podium, her expression unchanged. The motion passes. Military command now has full authorization to respond to the assault on Medical Station Alpha 7. She paused, looking out over the sea of faces. God help us all. As she walked from the chamber, her aide hurried to catch up. Admiral, what are your orders? Vasquez didn't slow her pace. Contact Admiral Chen of the Pacific Fleet. Tell him his daughter's murder has just been answered. Then get me a direct line to Strategic Command. What message should I send to Strategic Command, ma'am? The Admiral's smile was colder than the void between stars. Tell them to dust off the Damocles files. It's time the galaxy remembered why humans don't make good enemies. Behind them, the chamber buzzed with activity as representatives began making calls to their home worlds. Across human space, the message would be the same. Medical Station Alpha 7 had been avenged before the first shot was even fired. The hegemony had picked a fight with the wrong species. Admiral Keiko Chen hadn't slept in 3 days. She stood on the bridge of the TNS Retribution, watching through the massive viewports as humanity's response took shape. In the void around her, ships materialized from hyperspace with mechanical precision. Destroyers, cruisers, battleships, and things that officially didn't exist in any military registry. Fleet composition report, she said quietly, her voice carrying the weight of command earned through 30 years of service. Commander Torres consulted his tablet, his face pale in the blue glow of the tactical displays. 7th Fleet, 47 ships, full combat readiness. 3rd Fleet, 32 ships arriving in 6 hours. 5th Fleet, he paused, swallowing hard. Ma'am, they've deployed everything. Everything. The word hung in the air between them like a physical presence. Not just the regular Navy, but the ships that existed in the shadows, the experimental craft with weapons that violated 3 different galactic treaties, the stealth, Vessels that could appear anywhere without warning. The planet crackers that Earth officially denied possessing. What about the Prometheus project? Admiral Chen asked. Classified assets are available for deployment, Torres replied carefully. Even here, on the bridge of humanity's most advanced warship, some things couldn't be spoken aloud. Through the viewports, more ships continued to arrive. The hegemony intelligence networks had counted humanity's official fleet strength at roughly 200 combat vessels. What assembled around Admiral Chen now numbered in the thousands. Ma'am, the communications officer called out. Incoming transmission from Earth Command. Priority Alpha. The holographic projector flickered to life, revealing Admiral Vasquez's stern features. Behind her, Admiral Chen could see the bustling activity of Earth's primary command center. Officers rushing between stations. Holographic displays showing fleet movements across dozens of sectors. Keiko, Vasquez said without preamble. I'm sorry about Sarah. Admiral Chen's jaw tightened. Her daughter had been the finest medic in the Outer Rim, devoted to healing regardless of species. The footage of her final moments, shielding an alien child with her own body, had been burned into her memory. They made it personal, Admiral Chen replied. That was their mistake. The hegemony is requesting negotiations. They want to meet at the neutral station in the Vega system. They want to see our response first, Admiral Chen corrected. They want to know if humanity will roll over like we always have. Vasquez nodded grimly. What do you need? Admiral Chen looked out at the growing fleet, at ships appearing from the dark corners of human space that most people didn't even know existed. In the distance, she could see the distinctive silhouette of the TNS Damocles, a ship so classified that its existence was denied by 3 separate government agencies. Time, she said simply. The hegemony controls 47 star systems. Their fleet outnumbers ours 20-1, and their ships are larger and more heavily armed. She paused, a cold smile playing at her lips. But they've never fought humans before. Keiko, Vasquez began, concern evident in her voice. They think they know us, Admiral Chen continued. The peaceful traders, the compassionate healers, the species that always backs down from a fight. Her smile widened, becoming something predatory. They're about to learn that there's a reason humans conquered every predator on Earth. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Commander Torres cleared his throat nervously. Admiral, the hegemony fleet is massing at their forward base in the Centauri system. Intelligence estimates 300 ships, including their new dreadnoughts. Admiral Chen nodded absently, her attention focused on a small display showing long-range sensor readings. There, a brief flicker that would have been missed by anyone not looking for it. The TNS Phantom had just decloaked for a fraction of a second before vanishing again. Humanity's secret weapons were moving into position. Signal the fleet, she ordered. All ships are to maintain radio silence from this point forward. We jump to hyperspace in 6 hours. Destination, ma'am? Admiral. Chen's smile turned cold as winter on Pluto. The Centauri system. It's time to pay a house call. Torres swallowed hard. Ma'am, that's the heart of hegemony space. Their most heavily defended system. If we attack there, we won't be attacking, Admiral Chen interrupted. We'll be making a statement. The galaxy is about to learn that when you kill human medics, you don't get negotiations. She turned to face her crew, her voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. You get war. The hegemony base at Centauri Prime had never been attacked. Admiral Korath stood in the command center of Dreadnought Supremacy, watching the tactical displays with the confidence of a predator that had never met its match. Around him, 300 warships floated in perfect formation, the largest concentration of military power the galaxy had ever seen. Status report on the human response? He asked, his scaled fingers drumming against the command console. Minimal deployment detected, his aide replied. Long-range sensors show approximately 50 ships gathering near Earth space. Standard defensive posture. Korath's lipless mouth curved into what passed for a smile among his species. 50 ships. The humans were even weaker than intelligence had suggested. The massacre at the medical station had been regrettable. Poor optics for their alliance negotiations. But it would serve as an effective demonstration of hegemony power. Open a channel to the human fleet, he ordered. Let's end this before it begins. The holographic projector flickered to life, revealing the bridge of a human vessel. A woman in a crisp military uniform regarded him with cold, dark eyes. Her hair was streaked with gray, and there was something unsettling about her complete lack of fear. "I am Admiral Korath of the Hegemony Fleet," he announced. "You will surrender your vessels and submit to tribunal for harboring insurgents." The human woman smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "I am Admiral Keiko Chen of the Terran Navy," she replied calmly. "And you just made the biggest mistake in galactic history." Korath felt a flicker of unease. The human's confidence was wrong. No species facing a 6-to-1 disadvantage should sound so certain. "You have 1 hour to surrender," he said, trying to regain control of the conversation. "After that, we will demonstrate why the hegemony has never lost a war." "Actually," Admiral Chen said, her smile widening, "you have 30 seconds to look at your sensors." The transmission ended. Korath stared at the blank hologram for a moment before spinning toward his sensor operator. "Report." "Sir, I'm detecting some kind of interference. Long-range sensors are showing ghost images." The lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, bathing the command center in red light. Alarms wailed as officers scrambled to restore systems. Through the massive viewports, Korath could see other ships in his fleet experiencing similar problems. "What happened?" he roared. "Unknown, sir. All our sensors just went offline simultaneously. It's like something is jamming us. But the energy requirements would be impossible," Korath finished. No known technology could disable an entire fleet's sensors from range. Not without massive installations that would be easily detected. That's when he saw them. Ships, hundreds of them, appearing out of nowhere as if they'd been invisible. Not just small fighters or escorts, but massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed even the hegemony's finest vessels. They surrounded the Centauri system in a perfect sphere, their hulls black as the void between stars. "How many?" Korath whispered. His aide's voice shook as he read from the emergency displays. "Sir, we count over 800 vessels. Size classifications range from destroyer to something we don't have a category for." Korath's blood ran cold. 800 ships. The humans hadn't deployed 50 vessels. They'd deployed their entire secret fleet. A fleet that shouldn't exist, couldn't exist, but was currently surrounding his forces with overwhelming superiority. The communication system crackled to life. Admiral Chen's voice filled the command center, but now it carried the weight of absolute authority. "Attention, Hegemony Fleet. You are surrounded and outgunned. This is your only warning. Surrender now, or discover why humans don't wage war the way other species do." "This is impossible," Korath snarled into the communicator. "Our intelligence showed only 50 ships." "Your intelligence showed what we wanted it to show," Chen replied calmly. "Did you really think the species that conquered its own planet would leave its defenses to chance?" On the tactical display, red dots began appearing throughout hegemony space, not just at Centauri, but at every major base, every supply depot, every strategic installation. Human ships, appearing simultaneously across 47 star systems. "You see," Admiral Chen continued, her voice echoing through the silent command center, "while you were busy murdering our medics, we were busy being underestimated. The galaxy thought humans were weak because we chose to be peaceful. They forgot that peace is a choice, not a necessity." Korath's hands shook as he stared at the impossible sight before him. A human fleet that numbered in the thousands appearing, as if from nowhere. Weapons that could disable entire fleets without firing a shot. Technology that made the hegemony's most advanced systems look primitive. What are you?" he whispered. Admiral Chen's laugh was colder than the void of space. "We're the species that turned every predator on Earth into an endangered species. We're the civilization that split the atom for war before we learned to split it for peace. We're the race that built weapons capable of sterilizing our own planet, before we built the ships to leave it." The tactical display updated again. Now it showed human ships not just surrounding hegemony forces, but positioned throughout their empire. Every world, every station, every ship was within range of weapons that had remained hidden for decades. "Surrender, Admiral Korath," Chen said quietly. "Before you learn what happens when humans stop pretending to be civilized." The surrender lasted exactly 14 minutes. Admiral Korath's hands shook as he transmitted the stand-down order to his fleet. 300 of the hegemony's finest warships powered down their weapons and shields, accepting defeat in the face of overwhelming human superiority. For the first time in galactic history, the mighty hegemony had been forced to yield, but not everyone was willing to accept defeat. "Sir," the sensor operator's voice cracked with panic. "I'm detecting weapons charging on the Retribution and 7 escort vessels. They're not complying with the surrender order." Admiral Chen's face appeared on the holographic display, her expression grim. "Admiral Korath, you have rogue elements in your fleet. Order them to stand down immediately." "They're not under my command," Korath replied through gritted teeth. "Admiral Vex leads the 3rd battle group. He doesn't accept surrender easily." As if summoned by his name, a new face appeared on the communications array. The scarred and battle-hardened features of Admiral Vex, the hegemony's most aggressive commander. His yellow eyes burned with fanatical hatred. "I will not surrender to inferior species," Vex snarled. "The hegemony does not bow to primitives." Admiral Chen's voice remained calm, but there was steel beneath the surface. "Admiral Vex, power down your weapons. This is your final warning." Vex's response was to open fire. The hegemony, dreadnought Retribution, unleashed everything it had. Plasma cannons that could shatter moons, torpedo salvos capable of cracking planetary crusts, energy beams that burned hotter than the heart of a star. The escort vessels joined the assault, filling space with deadly light. The barrage struck the human ship Indomitable directly. When the energy dissipated, the human vessel floated unmarked in the void. "Impossible," Vex whispered, staring at his targeting displays. "Our weapons. They didn't even leave scorch marks." Admiral Chen's smile was colder than absolute zero. "Did you think we'd decloak our fleet without being prepared for treachery? Admiral Vex, you just fired on a vessel protected by defensive systems your scientists won't understand for another 1,000 years. "Impossible," Vex roared. "No defense can withstand that kind of firepower." "You're right," Chen agreed. "No known defense. But humans stopped limiting themselves to known technology about the time we decided to build this fleet." She paused, her expression hardening. "You wanted to see what humans are capable of when we stop playing nice. Congratulations. You're about to get a demonstration." The Indomitable's response was surgical in its precision. A single beam of coherent energy, no thicker than a pencil, lanced out from the human ship. It struck the Retribution's primary reactor and simply erased it. Not destroyed, not damaged. Erased, as if it had never existed. The massive dreadnought went dark instantly, dead in space. "The Retribution is gone, sir," the sensor operator reported in a shocked whisper. "Not destroyed. The reactor compartment simply isn't there anymore." Vex's remaining ships opened fire in desperation, throwing everything they had at the human fleet. The response was swift and terrible. Beams of impossible energy reached out like the fingers of an angry god, touching each rebel ship precisely once. Weapon systems simply ceased to exist. Engine compartments vanished into nothingness. Command centers disappeared, leaving confused crews floating in the void. In less than 30 seconds, 8 of the hegemony's most powerful warships had been reduced to helpless hulks. "How?" Admiral Korath breathed, staring at the displays in horror. "Disintegration beams," Admiral Chen explained casually. "We call them erasers. They break the bonds between atoms at the quantum level. Very precise, very clean, very final." Her smile widened. "We developed them about 20 years ago, right after we perfected faster-than-light communication, and decided we needed better ways to defend our colonies." The silence that followed was absolute. Every member of the hegemony fleet stared at their sensors, trying to comprehend what they'd just witnessed. Technology that could simply delete matter from existence. Defensive systems that made their most powerful weapons useless. A military force that had been hiding in plain sight for decades. "You see," Admiral Chen continued, her voice carrying, "across all frequencies, the galaxy made a fundamental error in judgment. You assumed that because humans choose peace, we must be weak. You forgot that predators don't advertise their capabilities. They demonstrate them only when necessary. She gestured toward the disabled hegemony ships. Every vessel in your fleet is now tagged by our quantum targeting systems. If any of you even think about resuming hostilities, we'll know about it before you finish the thought. And the next demonstration won't be so gentle. Admiral Korath found his voice at last. What do you want from us? Justice, Admiral Chen replied simply. The beings responsible for the massacre at Medical Station Alpha 7 will face trial. The hegemony will provide full reparations to the families of the victims, and you will publicly acknowledge that the attack was a war crime. And if we refuse? Admiral Chen's expression didn't change, but something dark flickered in her eyes. Then you'll discover what humans are really capable of when we stop caring about being civilized. Trust me, Admiral. You don't want that demonstration. As if, to emphasize her point, space around the Centauri system filled with new contacts. Not ships this time, but something far worse. Massive installations that had somehow been constructed in secret. Weapons platforms that could sterilize entire worlds from light years away. The galaxy's most powerful empire had just learned they'd been living on borrowed time for decades, and the loan had come due. The trial began 3 weeks later, broadcast live across every inhabited world in known space. The courtroom had been hastily constructed on the neutral station at Proxima Centauri, with representatives from 200 species serving as witnesses. In the defendant's dock sat Admiral Vex and the surviving officers from the assault on Medical Station Alpha 7, their scaled faces showing no remorse. But the real drama was unfolding in the observation galleries, where the galaxy's most powerful leaders watched humanity reveal the true extent of their capabilities. The prosecution will now present evidence, announced Judge Harrison, a stern woman whose calm demeanor masked the fury burning beneath. The holographic display activated, showing the final moments of Dr. Sarah Chen as she shielded an alien child with her own body. The assembled delegates watched in horrified silence as hegemony soldiers executed wounded patients in their beds, as they gunned down medics trying to flee, as they laughed while reducing a sanctuary of healing to smoking. Ruins. The defendant claims this was a military target, Prosecutor Williams continued. Let the record show that the most heavily armed individual on that station was Dr. Chen, who carried a standard medical scanner and a bottle of morphine. Admiral Vex leaned forward in his chair, his yellow eyes blazing with unrepentant hatred. They were treating insurgents, healing our enemies. They were treating children, Williams shot back. Zephyrian refugees who had been caught in crossfire. Civilian casualties of a war they had nothing to do with. It matters not, Vex snarled. The weak deserve their fate. Compassion is a disease that spreads through... He never finished the sentence. The holographic display shifted, showing real-time feeds from across hegemony space. Every major military installation, every fleet base, every strategic asset was surrounded by human ships. But not just ships. Weapons platforms that dwarfed anything the galaxy had seen before. The defendant speaks of strength, Williams said quietly. Let him explain how strength serves him now. The feeds showed hegemony. Admirals surrendering their fleets without firing a shot. Fortress worlds lowering their shields and begging for mercy. An empire that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries, brought to its knees in a matter of hours. You see, Williams continued, addressing the gallery of alien leaders, humanity has spent the last century being underestimated. We were the peaceful, traders, the generous allies, the species that always chose negotiation over conflict. What none of you realized is that peace isn't weakness, it's a choice made from a position of strength. The display shifted again, showing technical specifications that made the assembled delegates gasp in shock. Weapons that could crack planets like eggs. Ships that could travel between galaxies. Technology that made their most advanced civilizations look primitive. For 100 years, we've watched species like the hegemony conquer and destroy, telling ourselves that intervention would be wrong, that we had no right to impose our values on others. Williams's voice hardened. But when you murder our medics, when you execute beings under our protection, when you declare war on compassion itself, that's when you discover what humans are truly capable of. Chancellor Vorth of the Andromedan Empire leaned forward in his seat, his mechanical voice cutting through the silence. Are you threatening us? Not at all, Williams replied calmly. We're explaining why we've never needed to threaten anyone. The capacity for violence doesn't require its expression, but make no mistake, touch our people, harm those under our protection, and you'll learn why every predator on Earth learned to fear humans. Admiral Vex slammed his clawed fist on the defendant's table. Lies. Propaganda. You cannot have hidden such power for so long. Williams smiled, and for a moment, every being in that courtroom saw something predatory in her expression. Can't we? Tell me, Admiral, how did your scouts consistently underestimate our fleet strength? How did your intelligence networks always report our capabilities as minimal? How did your strategic planning always assume human forces would be negligible? The truth hit Vex like a physical blow. You've been manipulating our intelligence for decades. Longer than that, Williams confirmed. We've been carefully managing how the galaxy perceives us since first contact. Every assessment, every report, every strategic analysis we've made sure you saw exactly what we wanted you to see. A peaceful species with limited military capability and no stomach for real conflict. She gestured to the displays showing human forces positioned throughout known space. The reality is that we've been the galaxy's dominant military power for over 50 years. We just chose not to use that power. Until now. The silence that followed was deafening. Representatives from hundreds of worlds stared at the evidence before them, realizing that everything they thought they knew about humanity had been a carefully crafted illusion. Judge Harrison stood slowly, her voice carrying the weight of history. The court finds the defendants guilty of war crimes against sentient beings. The sentence is life imprisonment on the penal colony at Titan Base. She paused, looking directly at the gallery of alien leaders. But this trial isn't really about punishment. It's about understanding. Her gaze swept across the assembled delegates. For too long, the galaxy has operated on the assumption that might makes right, that the strong can prey upon the weak without consequence. Today, that assumption dies. The feeds showed human ships beginning to move throughout known space, not as conquerors, but as protectors. Medical stations were being established. Supply convoys were being escorted. Refugee camps were being guarded by vessels that could crack worlds, but chose instead to heal them. Humanity is no longer content to watch from the sidelines, Judge Harrison announced. We will not conquer you, we will not rule you, but we will no longer allow you to murder innocents while we debate the ethics of intervention. As the trial concluded and the delegates filed out in stunned silence, one truth echoed through their minds. The galaxy's balance of power hadn't shifted. It had been revealed, and the species they dismissed as weak healers had just become its unwilling guardians. The age of human restraint was over. 6 months after the trial, Ambassador Elena Rodriguez stood in what had once been the hegemony's throne room, watching as the last of the empire's bureaucrats packed their belongings. Through the massive windows, she could see human relief ships distributing supplies to refugee camps that stretched beyond the horizon. The transition is proceeding smoothly, reported Captain Martinez, consulting his tablet. The former hegemony, worlds have requested continued protection. Most are asking to join the Terran Commonwealth voluntarily. Elena nodded, unsurprised. Fear was a powerful motivator, but so was gratitude. When your oppressors vanish overnight and are replaced by people who bring food, medicine, and safety, allegiance shifts quickly. What about resistance movements? Minimal. The hegemony's military commanders are either in prison or have sworn loyalty oaths. Most of their forces have been integrated into local defense fleets under human oversight. Martinez paused. Ma'am, we're receiving similar requests from across the galaxy. The Altarian Republic wants a mutual defense treaty. The Vegan Confederation is asking for protection from the Kree Syndicate. Even the Andromedan Empire has inquired about consultation services. Elena almost smiled. 6 months ago, humanity had been a minor player in galactic politics. Now they were being courted by every major power in known space. Fear and respect were powerful diplomatic tools. Ambassador Rodriguez? The voice belonged to a young Zephyrian, female, one of the survivors from Medical Station Alpha 7. Her golden eyes held a mixture of hope and uncertainty. My name is Zilara. I was the child Dr. Chen saved. Elena felt her breath catch. This was the little girl Sarah Chen had died protecting, now grown and serving as a refugee coordinator. The symmetry wasn't lost on her. Dr. Chen would be proud to see what you've become, Elena said gently. I hope so, Zilara replied. I wanted to ask, will you really protect us, even though we're not human? It was a question that had been asked thousands of times across dozens of worlds. The galaxy had learned to expect protection to come with a price, allegiance to be bought with blood and treasure. The concept of unconditional protection was alien to most species. Yes, Elena answered simply. We will protect you. All of you. But why? Zilara persisted. What do you gain from it? Elena looked out at the refugee camps, at the human medics working alongside alien doctors, at the children of a dozen species playing together under the protection of Earth's most advanced warships. What did humanity gain from being the galaxy's guardians? Peace, she said finally. Not the peace of the weak who cannot fight, but the peace of the strong who choose not to. We gain a galaxy where our children can explore strange new worlds without fear, where our medics can heal without being murdered for their compassion, where civilization can flourish instead of merely survive. Her communicator chimed with an incoming message from Earth Command. Another crisis, another world calling for help. In the past 6 months, human forces had prevented 3 wars, stopped 2 genocides, and liberated dozens of slave colonies. The galaxy was learning to solve its problems with words instead of weapons, knowing that Earth's retribution awaited those who chose violence. Will you excuse me? Elena asked, stepping toward the communication console. The hologram that materialized showed Admiral Chen, still commanding humanity's forces from the bridge of the retribution. Behind her, the stars wheeled slowly past, a reminder that Earth's protectors were always in motion, always watching. Elena, Admiral Chen said without preamble. We've got a situation in the Rigel system. The Kree Syndicate is threatening to destroy the Arcturian colonies unless they surrender their mining rights. 3 million civilians at risk. ETA for the 7th Fleet? Elena asked, already knowing the answer. 2 hours. But the Syndicate has dead-manned switches on orbital platforms. If they see us coming… Admiral Chen didn't need to finish. Desperate enemies did desperate things. Elena nodded grimly. It was the eternal challenge of being the galaxy's police force. How do you save people from enemies willing to kill them rather than face justice? What about the Phantom Fleet? She asked. Admiral Chen's smile was sharp as a blade. Already in position, the Syndicate won't see them coming until it's too late. She paused, her expression softening slightly. Elena, are we doing the right thing? This isn't what our species signed up for when we first reached for the stars. It was a question that haunted humanity's leadership. They'd never wanted to be conquerors or galactic overlords. They'd simply wanted to explore, to trade, to learn from other civilizations. But the galaxy had forced their hand, and now they carried the weight of 1,000 worlds on their shoulders. We're doing what's necessary, Elena replied. Dr. Chen didn't die so we could conquer the galaxy. She died protecting an innocent child. That's what we're doing now, protecting innocence on a galactic scale. Even when those innocents don't always appreciate it, Elena thought of the dozens of species who viewed humanity with a mixture of gratitude and resentment. They wanted protection, but chafed under Earth's moral authority. They welcomed human aid, but feared human judgment. It was the price of power, to be needed and resented in equal measure. Especially then, she said finally, the moment we start protecting only those who appreciate it is the moment we become just another empire. Admiral Chen nodded slowly. Understood. We'll handle the Rigel situation. Chen out. As the hologram faded, Elena turned back to Zilara, who had waited patiently through the exchange. The young Zephyrian's expression was thoughtful. You don't enjoy this, do you? Zilara asked. Being the galaxy's guardians? No, Elena admitted. We don't. But that's exactly why we're the right species for the job. Through the windows, she could see more human ships arriving. Not warships this time, but colony vessels and research stations, exploration craft and diplomatic transports. Humanity was spreading across the galaxy not as conquerors, but as gardeners, planting seeds of civilization wherever they went. The irony wasn't lost on her. The species that had been dismissed as weak healers had become the galaxy's strongest protectors. The traders and diplomats had revealed themselves as the most advanced military force in known space. The advocates for peace had become the arbiters of justice among the stars. "Ambassador," Captain Martinez called out. "We're receiving a priority. Transmission from the Andromedan Empire. Chancellor Vorth wants to discuss a formal alliance." Elena sighed. Another negotiation. Another species wanting to align themselves with Earth's power. The requests never stopped coming. Protection treaties, trade agreements, mutual defense pacts. Every day brought new responsibilities, new worlds looking to humanity for guidance. "Schedule a meeting for tomorrow," she instructed. "And Captain, make sure our people know that this alliance comes with conditions. We won't protect species that prey on the weak or profit from suffering." "Understood, ma'am." As the sun set over what had once been the hegemony's capital world, Elena watched human medics working in the refugee camps below. They moved with the same dedication that had driven Dr. Sarah Chen, the same compassion that had cost her life. But now they worked under the protection of the galaxy's most advanced military, safe in the knowledge that their mercy was backed by overwhelming force. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson in the months since the medical station Alpha 7 massacre. Underestimating humanity was a mistake no species made twice. The peaceful traders and compassionate healers had revealed their true nature, not as conquerors or tyrants, but as the apex predators of their own world, evolved from hunters who had turned every threat on their planet into an endangered species. But they'd also learned something else. Humans who chose compassion over conquest, protection over profit, justice over revenge. They'd become the galaxy's reluctant guardians, not because they sought power, but because no one else was willing to stand up to those who did. The age of might makes right was ending. In its place rose something unprecedented in galactic history. A civilization powerful enough to enforce peace and wise enough to choose it. Dr. Sarah Chen would have been proud. As night fell over the former hegemony capital, Elena made her way to the memorial that had been erected in the city center. 17 names were carved into the black stone, the human medics who had died at medical station Alpha 7. At the top, in letters that caught the starlight, was the name that had changed everything. Dr. Sarah Chen. She died as she lived. Protecting others below it, in smaller text, were the words that had become humanity's unofficial motto in their role as galactic guardians. Compassion is not weakness. It is strength choosing mercy. Elena placed a small bouquet of earth flowers at the base of the memorial, then looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, Admiral Chen and the 7th Fleet were racing to save 3 million lives. Across the galaxy, human ships stood watch over refugee camps and trade routes, hospital ships and research stations. The children of Earth had spread to 1,000 worlds, carrying their parents' values to the farthest reaches of known space. The galaxy was safer now. Not perfect, it might never be perfect, but safer. Children could sleep without fear of orbital bombardment. Medics could heal without fear of execution. The weak had protectors, the innocent had champions, and the predators had learned that there were consequences for their actions. It wasn't the future humanity had planned for itself, but it was the future the galaxy needed. And sometimes, Elena reflected as she walked back toward the embassy, that was enough. The stars continued their ancient dance overhead, but now they danced under the watchful eyes of a species that had turned compassion into strength, and strength into justice. The galaxy would never be the same, and that, Dr. Chen, was exactly as it should be. The end.